Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to, well, getting genuinely well-informed.
hmm
We take stacks of research articles, our own digging, and basically boil it all down.
Yeah, distill the key stuff. Think of us as guides through, information overload.
Exactly. And today, wow, we are diving deep into someone monumental, a figure who really towers over history, not just music history.
Oh.
We are talking about Ludwig van Beethoven, a true architect of sound, of emotion, his impact. It's still huge today, right?
Oh, absolutely. Just the name. It brings up genius, struggle, those incredible pieces of music.
Instantly.
Yeah. And our mission today really is to unpack all that. The life, the revolutionary work, the legacy that just keeps going. And what's really fascinating and what we'll focus on is how his personal struggles, the really deep ones, they weren't just alongside his genius.
Right.
They were intertwined. They sort of fed each other, forging this incredible musical heritage. We'll look at how he pushed the boundaries structurally and just deepened the emotional power of music itself. It was a transformation, really, a permanent one for the music world.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? This isn't just about music notes or dates. It's a human story,
Holy.
a real saga of struggle, incredible innovation, and an impact that goes way beyond the concert hall. It's relevant to music, sure, but also culture, human history, perseverance.
The whole artistic spirit, really.
Exactly. So, ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Ludwig van Beethoven. When we talk about genius in classical music, I mean, he's got to be top tier, right?
Undoubtedly. One of the absolute greatest. Born in Bonn, Germany, 1770.
And he didn't just, write tunes. He fundamentally changed what music was, what it could do.
Right. He shifted it from maybe elegant entertainment to something raw, deeply personal, something that reflected the human drama happening all around. He really was an architect of this profound transformation.
That term architect feels so right. Pushing boundaries, defiance, just this huge vision.
Yeah, and his impact was sort of twofold, but totally connected.
Oh.
On one side, he blew open the structural boundaries.
How so specifically?
Well, think about the forms themselves, like the symphony, the sonata.
Yeah.
Before Beethoven, they had a kind of predictable length structure.
Right, more contained.
Exactly. He stretched those forms way out,
Yeah.
made them longer, more complex, able to hold these huge epic narratives inside them.
Okay.
He just loaded them with new possibilities, new challenges for everyone involved, performers and listeners. And then the other side, he massively deepened the emotional power.
That raw feeling you mentioned.
Yes, he made music speak with this intensity, this personal voice, this psychological depth that was, well, revolutionary for the time.
So it's the technique and the feeling.
Absolutely, that fusion, pushing the limits of what music could be technically.
Yeah.
And exploring the deep, messy stuff of being human. That's the hallmark.
That's why it still hits so hard today, probably.
I think so. It's visceral.
And his story, it's just epic, isn't it? How the creativity and the personal struggles weren't separate.
No, they're constantly feeding each other. You can almost hear it in the notes, can't you? The battles, the wins, the despair.
Yeah, you really can. It's not just abstract genius. It's the human being translating their inner world into sound for all of us.
Precisely.
That's where it gets really fascinating. So to really get Beethoven, the giant he became, we have to go back. Right back to the beginning.
Definitely.
His childhood, his early music training. These were the foundations, right? Even if they were maybe a bit rough.
Oh, they were crucial. And yeah, rough might be an understatement sometimes. His father, Johann von Beethoven.
He was a musician too, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, a court musician. And he saw his son's talent very, very early on. Prodigious talent.
Okay.
So he applied strict discipline. And when we say strict, we mean intense. Sometimes bordering on, well, abusive by today's standards.
Yeah.
Really harsh training sessions.
To make him a prodigy.
Exactly, to push him into the spotlight early. So from a tiny age, Ludwig was just immersed. Piano, violin, organ lessons, constantly.
Wow, that sounds like immense pressure.
It was. And looking back, it seems like exploitation, maybe.
Yeah.
But, and this is the complex part, it was undeniably critical for his technical skills.
Right, it built that foundation.
It absolutely did. It honed his abilities, forced him to master the instruments, the language of music, with an intensity that just set him up for everything later. He learned control, mechanics, the rules.
So he could break them later.
Precisely. You have to know the rules inside out to break them effectively.
And the results came pretty fast.
Astonishingly fast. His first public concerts, he was just 7 years old.
7, performing professionally.
Yeah, captivating audiences already. And by 12, he had a paid gig as a violinist in the court orchestra in Bonn.
That's incredible for a 12-year-old.
It really is. And it shows, these aren't just little biographical details. They show how deep his connection to music was right from the start. It wasn't a hobby.
This is his whole life.
It's his identity woven into him, constant practice, performing, absorbing, just living music.
So after this intense start in Bonn, what came next?
Education-wise, well, it kept evolving. And then came a really key moment. His first trip to Vienna, 1787. He was 17.
Ah, Vienna, the center of the musical universe back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The undisputed heart of music, culture, a magnet for every ambitious musician. Imagine him arriving there young, hungry.
Yeah.
And this trip, it gave him this incredible, though maybe brief, chance to meet Mozart.
Wow. Beethoven met Mozart.
It seems so, yes. The details are a bit sketchy, but the opportunity was there. Two giants, separated by a generation, but, connected by genius.
A passing of the torch, almost.
Could be seen that way, yeah. Even if it was just a quick meeting.
But that Vienna trip didn't last long, did it?
No, it was cut short very abruptly. Just weeks in, he got devastating news from home. His mother was critically ill. She died soon after. Then his sister passed away, too.
Oh, wow. So he had to rush back to Bonn.
He did. A stark reminder of the personal challenges, the responsibilities that were always there, even as his career was starting to take off. He effectively became head of the family very young.
Tough start. But Vienna called him back.
Oh, yeah. The pull was too strong. In 1792, he moved there permanently, with support from patrons back in Bonn, actually.
Okay, so this time it's for good, to study more.
Exactly. Continue his education, launch his career properly. And this was crucial for his growth. He took lessons from the big names of the time.
Like Haydn.
Most notably Haydn, yeah. Papa Haydn, the master of classical form. And also studied counterpoint with Albrechtsberger, a really rigorous theorist.
So he was learning from the best, really soaking up the tradition.
Totally immersed in it, learning from the source.
But even then, while he's starting with these classical masters, was he already starting to, do his own thing?
Yes, that's the fascinating part. He deeply respected tradition, learned the rules meticulously, but he wasn't just a student. He was absorbing it all, and even then, you can see him starting to develop his own unique voice, his own vision.
Synthesizing it.
Exactly. Synthesizing, experimenting subtly. Then later, much more boldly, charting his own course. The seeds of the revolution were already being sown, even then.
So this brings us to his early period works, right? Roughly up to the early 1800s.
That's right. Broadly speaking, from when he arrived in Vienna, say 1792, up until around 1802. And these works, they definitely show him working within those classical structures.
The Haydn and Mozart influence is clear.
Oh, yeah. You hear the balance forms, the sonata form, structure, exposition, development, recap, the standard four-movement symphony layout, the elegance of the string quartet style. He understood it perfectly.
And there's always a but with Beethoven.
Oh,
This wasn't just imitation, was it?
Not at all. Even here, in this early phase, before he really breaks the mold wide open, you can feel this extraordinary emotional depth and this restless search for innovation, like he's already pushing against the edges of the frame.
And this period gave us some pretty famous pieces, too, didn't it?
Absolutely, some really important works. His early piano sonatas, think of the Pathétique or the Moonlight, huge pieces.
Black.
Yeah, and his first two symphonies, plus a whole bunch of string quartets. You can already sense the power building, the intense feeling bubbling up. Hints of what's coming.
Let's talk about those first two symphonies. You said they follow classical lines, but with hints.
Exactly. They're structured traditionally. You can hear Haydn's influence clearly.
Yeah.
But there are little twists. Like the first symphony, it starts with this chord that's harmonically, well, a bit weird for an opening, unsettling on purpose.
Ah, playing with expectations already.
Right. And the second symphony, it has moments of just greater intensity, a wider dynamic range, more drama than was typical then.
So not just copying the masters.
No, it's like a new voice finding its strength, testing the waters, what's possible, what's acceptable.
And listening to these early works, what really jumps out? The melodies.
Definitely the melodic richness. These aren't just nice tunes. They feel really purposeful, expansive, memorable, and the harmony, it's varied, pushes things a bit, adds color, tension. That emotional complexity is starting to bloom. And the rhythm. So vibrant, always driving forward. It feels alive. It's the foundation of his genius, plain to see. laying all the groundwork.
So he mastered the classical style.
He inherited that amazing legacy from Mozart and Haydn. Absolutely. Understood it inside out.
But then he started to transform it.
That's the key.
Yeah.
He expanded those molds, transformed them, poured his own unique personality and vision into them, stamped his own signature onto music, basically.
Stood on the shoulders of giants, then built something new.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Ooh.
He learned the rules so well, he could dismantle and rebuild them.
Which leads us perfectly into the next phase, the big turning point.
Ah, yes. The heroic period.
Right. Roughly 1803 to maybe 1812. This is where things get really intense musically and personally.
Hugely intense. This period was massively shaped by the revolutionary ideas just swirling around Europe, especially Napoleon Bonaparte.
Beethoven was a fan initially, wasn't he?
Oh, very much so. Beethoven deeply valued freedom, human rights, the whole Enlightenment project, progress, reason. And he saw Napoleon at first as the embodiment of that, a liberator, carrying the torch of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity.
And he wanted his music to reflect that.
Exactly. He wanted to capture that grand, heroic spirit, overcoming tyranny, achieving human potential. He needed a bigger musical scale to express these huge political and social shifts.
But then came the big disillusionment.
Massive disillusionment. When Napoleon declared himself emperor in 1804.
Betraying all those ideals.
Precisely. Beethoven was apparently furious. Famously, he dedicated his huge new Third Symphony, the Eroica, the heroic, to Napoleon.
Right.
And he's supposedly just tore up the title page in a rage, saying something like, so he's just another ordinary man. Now he'll trample on human rights too, just for his own ambition.
Wow. That's such a vivid image. So how does that feeling, that anger, that disappointment, how does it actually get into the music? What does it sound like?
Great question. And that's where you see his genius adapt. This disillusionment, this inner turmoil, it directly fueled really radical changes in his musical language.
Okay, like what?
You hear way more intense dramatic tension, passages building with almost unbearable suspense, then resolving unexpectedly or not resolving easily. Much starker dynamic contrasts going from super quiet to incredibly loud, like instantly.
Creating conflict in the sound itself.
Exactly. Like a battle playing out.
Yeah.
And his themes, his melodies become more forceful. Often short, punchy motifs that he hammers away at, developing them relentlessly through a whole piece.
That sounds like the Fifth Symphony.
Quintessential example.
Okay.
But this creates this powerful narrative. Struggle, conflict, and maybe eventually triumph. It's less like polite conversation, more like a fist pounding the table.
And this heroic period gave us some absolute blockbusters.
Undeniably. The third, Eroica, which just blew the doors off the symphony genre with its length and emotional scope. The fifth, obviously, with its unforgettable opening. The sixth, the Pastoral, which is different, more about nature, but still expansive. And the seventh, with that incredible rhythmic drive, each one a monument.
Let's stick with the fifth for a second, that iconic opening.
Right. The four-note motif, famously interpreted as fate knocking at the door.
Yeah.
But what's truly mind-blowing isn't just the motif itself, it's what he does with it. He takes that tiny, almost primal, rhythmic idea and makes it the building block for the entire symphony. It permeates every single movement, sometimes obviously, sometimes hidden, transformed.
So it creates this amazing unity.
Unprecedented unity and dramatic force. He varies the rhythm, the harmony, the instruments playing it, making this tiny seed grow into this vast narrative of struggle.
From fate knocking.
To this universal symbol of his own fight against deafness, against adversity. Humanity's fight, really. It's a masterclass in taking one small idea and building a whole world from it. Truly one of the most impressive feats in music history.
Just amazing. And that deep dive into the fifth really shows his innovations weren't just about the big picture, the form, the themes.
No, not at all. His genius went right down into the nuts and bolts. Orchestration, harmony. He was revolutionary there, too.
How did he change the orchestra?
Well, before him, the symphony orchestra was capable, sure, but kind of standardized.
Yeah.
Strings, woodwinds, brass. Mostly predictable combinations.
Okay.
Beethoven just threw open the doors. He started bringing in instruments that were rare or just not used in symphonies before,
That
like the trombone.
adds that powerful brass sound.
Exactly. And the contrabassoon for that really deep, resonant growl. And the piccolo for piercing high notes. He was actively expanding the orchestral color palette.
Giving himself more colors to paint with.
Precisely. Adding new textures, weight, sometimes a real raw power. Imagine hearing trombones blast out in a symphony for the first time. It must have been quite a shock. adding new sonic dimensions.
And the harmony. You said he pushed boundaries there, too.
Oh, big time. He was constantly stretching the rules of classical harmony, pushing modulation, changing keys in unexpected ways, pushing tonality itself, the whole system of keys.
Using more dissonance, clashing notes.
Yes, introducing unexpected dissonances, abrupt shifts in key chord progressions that probably sounded pretty jarring to audiences back then.
But they paved the way.
Absolutely. Paved the way for the Romantics and everything that followed. It was like he was testing the limits, seeing how far he could bend the rules before they broke, and creating new ones in the process. Harmony became another tool for drama.
So the overall effect of all this
Was profound. He showed music wasn't just pretty background noise. It was this dynamic force that could grab you, evoke powerful emotions, psychological state.
you feel things deeply.
Exactly. Through his orchestration, his harmony, his music became this vivid reflection of the complexity of the human soul. Emotion, thought, struggle, all intertwined. It became an experience.
A transformative experience. And speaking of struggle,
Yeah.
we have to talk about the biggest one he faced personally.
Yes, his deafness.
It's just the most challenging trial you can imagine for a musician, isn't it?
It truly is one of the most tragic, profound ironies in all of music history. Think about it. The most crucial sense for a musician, hearing,
Oh.
slowly, relentlessly vanishing. The cruelty is almost unbelievable. The
Ugh.
practical challenges, conducting, composing, just talking to people.
Yeah.
And yet, and this is the paradox, this immense obstacle became a catalyst.
How so? When did it start?
It started gradually, around 1798, so it wasn't sudden. A slow, agonizing decline.
That sounds almost worse.
It must have been terrifying. It reached a really critical stage around 1814 to 1816. By then, hearing everyday conversation was incredibly difficult, even with those big ear trumpets he used.
So he became more isolated.
Increasingly isolated, yeah.
Okay.
He had to use conversation books. Eventually, people would write questions down for him. Imagine living in silence while creating the most powerful sounds imaginable. It's chilling.
But you said it was a catalyst. How did it not just crush his creativity?
That's the crucial point,
Yeah.
the paradox. It didn't hinder his creativity. If anything, it deepened it.
How?
Well, you could argue that as the outside world of sound faded away, his inner world of music became even more vivid, more intense.
He had to rely purely on his imagination.
Entirely on his inner ear, his phenomenal ability to conceive and structure complex music entirely in his mind. Composing from a place beyond external noise, his inner vision took over completely.
That speaks volumes about resilience.
Incredible resilience. And maybe how adversity can unlock new artistic dimensions.
Yeah.
His creativity wasn't silenced. Silence transformed it.
And we have a window into his feelings about this, don't we? That famous letter.
Ah, yes. The Heiligenstadt Testament. It's profoundly moving. The clearest, most heart-wrenching expression of his inner world during this crisis.
Tell us about it. He wrote it but didn't send it.
Exactly. Written in 1802 while he was staying in the village of Heiligenstadt outside Vienna. Addressed to his brothers, he basically poured out his soul.
About the deafness.
About the despair, the loneliness, the isolation caused by his deafness, why he seemed withdrawn, maybe misanthropic. He wrote something like, "Oh, you who think I'm stubborn or hateful, how wrong you are. You don't know the secret cause."
Wow.
He describes the agony, the shame of not being able to hear, to socialize normally, but then, amidst the despair,
There's hope.
there is resolve. He talks about how art, his music, was the only thing keeping him going. That he felt he couldn't leave the world until he'd produced everything he felt destined to create.
So art saved him in a way.
It gave him meaning, purpose. It's an incredible document. Shows the personal tragedy, but also the inner strength of this artist finding redemption through creation, even facing that loss. It puts the heroic music into stark context.
From those depths, we move into his late period, works seen as his most mature, most innovative.
Yes. And it's almost as if the deafness, instead of limiting him, pushed him in completely new territory, uncharted musical worlds.
So this late period, roughly 1815 to his death in 1827.
That's generally the time frame, yeah. And it's fascinating because his deafness becomes profound, almost total. But his artistic output, the philosophical depth, it hits its absolute peak.
Another paradox.
A huge one. As the outer world went silent, the inner music got louder, more complex, more expressive. He was operating purely in the realm of musical imagination, free from external sound.
And the masterpieces from this time, they're legendary.
Absolutely. Some of the most profound, challenging, revolutionary music ever written. The late string quartets.
Which are seen as incredibly personal, right?
Deeply personal. and complex. They push boundaries structurally, emotionally, philosophically, often introspective, sometimes incredibly dramatic. They defy expectations, unusual numbers of movements, deep fugues. They're demanding, but incredibly rewarding. The essence of his late style.
And the Missa Solemnis. More than just a
Oh,
mass.
far more. It is a setting of the Catholic Mass, but he turns it into this epic musical narrative. The human soul's relationship with God, exploring faith, doubt, suffering, transcendence,
Yeah.
on a huge scale.
A philosophical statement.
Deeply personal and philosophical. He said he wanted it to go from the heart, may it go to the heart. Shows the intent. It challenges you, elevates.
And then the big one, the Ninth Symphony.
The ninth.
Yeah.
His magnum opus of this period, maybe his whole career, a masterpiece expressing these universal themes, humanity, brotherhood, on an unbelievable scale.
Yeah.
From turmoil to sheer triumphant joy.
It just bursts with this energy and message. But how did he get that humanitarian message across in a symphony? That was usually just instruments.
That was the revolutionary part. Its structure, its content. In the final movement, completely unprecedented, he brought in a chorus. Voices.
In a symphony, that was unheard of.
Totally unheard of. Symphonies were instrumental. He dared to blend voices with the orchestra, setting Friedrich Schiller's famous poem, Ode to Joy.
Transforming the symphony.
Completely. From purely instrumental to vocal, philosophical, a statement about joy, unity, brotherhood for everyone. It shocked people, inspired them, changed the symphony forever. Taking a secular poem about fellowship and making it the climax of this huge symphonic journey, inviting humanity to sing along.
So he didn't just expand the form.
No, he deepened music's whole social and philosophical function. The ninth became this direct address to humanity, a call for unity. It cemented music's role as a vehicle for huge ideas, Enlightenment ideals, a musical manifesto for a better world, really.
It's staggering. And as we've seen, his musical innovations were incredible. But his impact went beyond the notes, didn't it? Socially, culturally.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That impact was arguably just as important. He didn't just change how music sounded, he changed what it meant to be an artist in society.
How so?
He's really one of the first and definitely one of the most powerful examples of an artist fighting for independence, economic, social freedom, moving away from that old patronage system.
Where musicians were basically servants to nobles or the church.
Pretty much like skilled craftspeople maybe, but dependent on their patrons. Beethoven just refused that role. He demanded respect as an independent visionary artist, classical music's first real entrepreneur in a way.
How did he manage that practically?
Through really smart, bold moves. Instead of just relying on one patron, he started organizing his own public concerts.
Taking control.
Direct control over performances, repertoire, and crucially, the money. He was meticulous about publishing his works too, securing rights, reaching a wider audience, the growing middle class.
So aiming beyond the elite.
Definitely. Reaching the broader public. It was a radical shift, pioneering the idea of the artist as a free agent.
And this independence, this spirit, it fed into his music too.
Consciously.
Yeah.
By asserting his independence, he was living those ideals of freedom, individual rights, enlightenment, progress. And his music, especially the heroic stuff, became the soundtrack for those ideals. Struggle for freedom, triumph over adversity.
So his music becomes a statement.
A powerful social and political statement, resonating with the revolutionary times. It wasn't just background music, it was part of the cultural transformation happening.
And that idea of the artist as this independent, visionary figure, did that stick?
Hugely. His ideas about the artist's role, their responsibility not just an entertainer but a truth teller, a voice with a message, became foundational for modern art. For composers, writers, artists who came after, he basically wrote the blueprint for the modern artist.
So summing up his legacy, it's immense.
Monumental. His music is obviously core repertoire everywhere, constantly performed, recorded, but he also shaped everything that came after. The whole Romantic period starts pretty much with him.
They took his ideas and ran with them.
Emotion, individualism, breaking forms. That was the jumping off point. And his influence just keeps going right into modern music. He bridged eras and cast this huge shadow, challenged everyone who followed.
And his music itself, it's that perfect blend, isn't it? Personal expression, deep emotion, but also incredible skill.
The most beautiful, powerful example of how all that can merge into something transcendent. How personal experience through art becomes universal. And his life story, that message about disability and creativity, it's universal too. Losing his hearing just highlights the power of music, the power of the inner human world to create, to endure against unimaginable odds.
A testament to resilience.
The spirit triumphing over the body's limits, he lived it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, Beethoven, More than a composer.
Yeah.
A force of nature, really.
One of humanity's greatest creative forces, yeah. Leaving this mark on all time. Even in his own silence, he created the most universal sounds.
Is music. It really is a universal language, isn't it?
It gets into the deepest parts of us. It expresses everything: pain, hope, joy, peace, sometimes all at once. It echoes our own lives.
He'll always be remembered as someone who just pushed boundaries, musically, formally,
Yeah.
but also celebrated those big human values.
Absolutely. Fearless innovation coupled with profound humanity.
So for you listening, we really hope this dive into Beethoven leaves you thinking.
Thinking about how struggle can fuel art, how one person refusing to be limited can just resonate for centuries. His refusal to be silenced by silence, that's maybe the greatest legacy.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into Beethoven's world. Seriously, go listen to some of his music now, maybe the fifth. Hear that struggle and triumph.
Or read the Heiligenstadt Testament online.
Mm,
Connect with his voice directly.
definitely. Until next time, keep diving deep.